Well, thank you again for joining us this week for our Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast. We are working our way through the Bible over a 3-year span of time, and we're doing it chronologically. So what we're doing right now is looking at Job. We came to chapter 12 in the Genesis, and we're moving off to Job because most likely Job would have been written during that time. And we're also reading a psalm a day. And so our broadcast is looking at one of those passages. For the first part of this week, we're going to be in the Psalms. So if you have your Bible, let's turn to Psalm 18, one of the most, it's a long psalm, relatively long psalm, that's also kind of a rambling psalm, and just different pieces here. But the first part of the psalm in particular is just very wonderful. He starts off with descriptions of the Lord and why he loves him. And he calls him, I think, several times, I think 9 different times he speaks of the Lord as my something. So this is a personal psalm, and David is reaching out to pray to the Lord, speaking of God being first of all, his strength. I love you, Lord. O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer and my God and my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield, the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I'm saved from my enemies. And so he begins with this long description of God and who he is, and this is foundational. This psalm is very helpful to all of us. Ever since the Lord gave it to us, it's foundational because it lays down who God is right up front, and in very descriptive ways. And David is saying, this is my relationship with the Lord is personally, not simply a theological treatise on God. This is my personal relationship. And as he calls on the Lord in verse 6, we see that he calls on the Lord out of distress. So as often the case with poor David, he is dealing with real issues of, I guess this is why he wrote a lot of his Psalms. He was going through hard times. He was in distress. He was in anxiety. He was fearful for his life many times. And that's when he really is most likely to turn to the Lord in these kinds of prayers, these kinds of Psalms. And so he does that in this particular one as well. Now he goes on to talk about a lot of things about the Lord here. But he goes on, if we drop on down to verse 25 to 27, he begins to also talk about, again, the nature of God. With the kind, you show yourself kind. With the blameless, you show yourself astute. But then he moves on in verse 28, the Lord my God illumines my darkness. Verse 30, he's my refuge. He likes to talk about that a lot. But then he moves on to this wonderful little section in verse 32 to 33. The God who girts me with strength and makes my way blameless. He makes my feet like hinds' feet, and he sets me upon my high places. So in a very beautiful word picture, he gives us a picture of what this God does for him during this time of distress. He doesn't necessarily take away the distressing circumstances. Sometimes he will. Sometimes he will deal with the enemy or whatever. But often what the Lord does for David and for us is to give us the strength, the ability to deal with the circumstances that we're in. And when he speaks of, in verse 33, he makes my feet like hinds' feet. This is a particular kind of deer, a red deer, that lived in this area. That was one of these like a mountain goat type of deer. They could bound over rocks and climb into cliffs and places that almost no other animal could go to, especially a big animal. And as a result of that, they're able to get over any obstacle in the way. He sets me on my high places. He puts me in places of safety. The interesting thing to me is this in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 19. Habakkuk, who is going through his own great battle and, matter of fact, devastation of his whole world, quotes from this psalm. So that was written later. He quotes from this psalm and says the exact same thing. My world is being devastated, but you will give me hinds feet. You will give me the ability to overcome and to climb through and over top of anything that comes my way because of who you are as my God. This is wonderful thoughts for you and I to ponder and to pray over and meditate over as we go through our own distressful times. And I hope you do that. I trust you will. We'll give you a wonderful day in the Lord when you get a handle on these kinds of things and do it God's way.